Now let's cross to Montenegro, where police discovered an underground tunnel linking an apartment with a nearby storeroom of the Podgorica High Court. The depot was holding seized drugs, weapons and other evidence. 6 people have been charged with theft and criminal association. Montenegro, a NATO member, is considered one of the main drug smuggling routes towards Western Europe. And fighting against crime and corruption is one of the main pillars in its drive to join the EU. Mirjana Miladinovic has this story from Podgorica.
It was meant to be just another routine inspection of the High Court storage room, where evidence from the most serious crimes committed in Montenegro is kept. But guards soon discovered that the evidence had been scattered, despite no signs of forced entry. Surveillance camera footage showed nothing unusual either. Montenegrin police had no answer as to how the pieces of evidence were rearranged if no one had entered, but the High Court officials did. One employee suggested that an air conditioner had been blowing strongly inside the room until she was alerted to the fact that the room had no air conditioning. It was then discovered that the wind was coming from a tunnel.
Dimenzije tog otvora i onoga što se vidi iza njega su takve da ukazuju da se uopšte ne radi o nečemu što je rađeno na brzinu i što je rađeno bez određene i tehničke podrške.
The approximately 40-meter-long tunnel led from the High Court's warehouse to a residential building across the street. Its purpose was not yet known, but there were various theories. One of them pointed to an intent to steal evidence from the High Court's warehouse, including weapons, over 2 tons of cocaine, or laptops belonging to a cryptocurrency mogul Dok Von, who is in custody in Montenegro. However, these possibilities were soon ruled out.
Radi se o stvarima koje su na potpuno drugom mjestu u koje ni u jednom momentu nisu bili ugroženi ili kompromitovani.
It was later claimed that 19 weapons from 5 different criminal cases were missing. But both the court president and experts believed that the target was likely not the evidence material, as they had already been processed, but rather an escape or an assassination plot, as right next to the depot is a detention room.
Ukoliko perfektno obezbidimo zatvor i ukoliko također perfektno sprovođenje obezbidimo, sljedeća šansa je bjegstvo prilikom suđenja. I nije bio mali broj slučajeva. Tad je prosto najviše mogućnosti ukoliko se prethodno pripremite.
Authorities estimate that the illegal tunnel project had lasted for at least a month and a half, and it had been planned precisely during the renovation of the building housing the High, Appeals and Supreme Courts. To my right is the building where the tunnel's excavation began, and on the left is the High Court. Just a few hundred meters away are the country's most important state institutions: the parliament, the prime minister's office, the presidential residence and the central bank of Montenegro, making this street one of the most secure in the country. At least it used to be. And the tunnel's location made its discovery an even bigger shock.
Taj kvart mora da ima posebnu i kontraobavještajnu zaštitu. Dakle, prosto nevjerojatno gdje imamo 3 prstena operativnog i obavještajnog pokrivanja. Prosto da se neko usudi da iskopa tunel, ovo je jako dobro planirano. Pa samo pogledajte kako je uklopljeno kad se renovira ono zdanje, dakle zgrada Višeg vrhovnog i apelacionog suda. Sve do detalja, sve proračunato. Imam očaj da su imali i detaljan projekt zgrade, dakle ništa nije prepušteno slučaju. Dakle, sve karike su perfektno funkcionisale. A čim je to do tančina isplanirano i ima očigledno vrlo jaku finansijsku podršku, onda se tu zaista ne radi o amaterima, nego se radi o ozbiljnim profesionalcima i sve inklinira prema nekoj očigledno od najmoćnijih kriminalnih organizacija, ne samo našim prostorima, nego i planetarno.
It's yet to be determined which of the major criminal groups ordered the digging, but the suspects so far are all from the region.
većina tih lica dolazi iz Srbije i da su svakako imali i određene pomagače koji su iz Crne Gore. Ono što je značajno, što danas treba svakako reći, je da za 4 lica imamo podnešene krivične prijave i to su 4 lica koja su identifikovana. Imamo 2 prijave koje se odnose na NN lica, za sada još uvijek neidentifikovana lica u onom potpunom smislu, operativno negdje smo i u saznanjima i o tim licima. I imamo najmanje još 5 lica koja su učestvovala u ovoj krivičnoj radnji.
Montenegrin authorities have announced they will cooperate with the security services in the region to locate and apprehend the culprits. For now, only a Montenegrin national suspected to have been the driver of the tunnel diggers has been arrested. Experts believe the most critical task of the investigation will be to uncover the tunnel's motive. Only then, they say, can they map out their own path to the mastermind. Mirjana Miladinovic, TRT World, Podgorica, Montenegro.
Joining me now from Podgorica is Daliborka Uljarevic. She is an executive director of the Center for Civic Education. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So how will this last incident affect Montenegro's bid to join the EU? We know the country officially applied to join the EU in 2008, and many of the prerequisites are cracking down on organized crime and corruption. Do you think this tunnel scandal will affect its bid in any way?
We are negotiating already for 11 years, and unfortunately the whole process is in a deep regression. The incident with the tunnel is probably one of the best illustration to what extent the authorities are not actually dedicated to strengthening judiciary system, which is crucial in fighting organized crime and corruption. The whole case still does not have visible consequences because we don't have the full data, since the higher court is very important institutions when it comes to these cases, but it is by any doubt the fact that the tunnel is located in the very center of the city, surrounded by the headquarters of all of the most important institutions. So it's unnoticed excavation is an obvious security oversight, and this is not a recommendation for the European Union, but to actually fasten Montenegrin road to the EU, as much as the approach of the politicians who use this opportunity just to make photos, to tweet, to make headlines, giving a lot of the unresponsible statements.
Right, this isn't new. Right, we know the country has been struggling with organized crime for years now. Is there a clear plan to address this issue and once and for all? And I wonder, what steps is the EU expecting Montenegro to take at this point, and is this actually happening?
EU is insisting for years on track record when it comes to the organized crime and corruption. What it means, it actually refers not only to the identification of the criminal groups, their arrest or indictment, but to the final verdict where it will be assessed by the courts and decided what actually has happened. We did make certain progress in the last couple of years when it comes to several arrests of, let's say, so-called big fishes, but so far we don't have none of these cases progressing in terms of the judicial proceedings, and it will take also a couple of years for that, with a lot of the uncertainty how this will end, especially taking into account the fact that a lot of the proofs is major proofs in most of these cases is actually encrypted communication, which is still dubious when it comes to the final court verdicts.
Right, so there is a clear plan then for the near future in place.
So far, I expect that European Commission report, which we will get in the mid of the October, will have some of the facts which are mainly noticing the progress in the work of the Chief Special Prosecutor, but this will not be enough to make a better overall mark when it comes to the fundamental chapters. I'm referring to chapter 23 and 24, where the actually fight against organized crime and corruption is based.
Interesting. And let's talk about what happened a little bit more here. The tunnel was found accidentally. And what does this tell us about the condition of Montenegro's infrastructure, but also the intelligence devices?
The institutional infrastructure is in a very bad condition. This especially refers to the prosecutorial and judicial premises, where they don't have a basic working conditions, and expectations are very high from these people who are working there and from the institution as a whole. The bottleneck in the fight against organized crime is currently the higher court, which does not have a sufficient number of courtrooms, specialized judges for this type of cases, making the path to verdicts also very long. More precisely, in all of the cases where indictments are brought by the Special Prosecutor Office, trials are conducted precisely before the higher court. So far, we have not been informed whether the authorities have determined the motives or which specific cases was tunnel dug for. We only have various insinuations that are still not serious enough to comment on, which actually demonstrates a total failure of the both intelligence service and the police organization, since this is a core of the investigation that they should have been done so far.
Right, and I guess the main question is now who is behind this. Serbian criminal groups are the main suspects behind this tunnel for now. And is Serbia cooperating in this investigation, at least?
Regarding the main suspect, the question is actually who is the mastermind and with what motive, which has not yet been uncovered. We do know that some of the workers on the tunnels are from Serbia, and Serbia traditionally does not cooperate in these cases with Montenegro, especially when they have a specific interest to protect some of the criminals. Unfortunately, Montenegrin government is behaving very subordinated when it comes to the Serbian authorities, so they don't even open this question in public anymore. We do know that some of these people are Serbian nationals, but we cannot get any information whether they have established cooperation with Serbia to identify these people and for them to be actually extradited to Montenegrin institutions. I don't expect that Serbia will do that, especially if they have a specific interest to protect these people. Actually, if some of the criminals who paid for that are linked to the Serbian authorities.
Right, and one last question, Dalibor. What are some of the key details that remain unclear about the very purpose of this tunnel, and what's the significance of the higher court in Podgorica? I mean, what types of cases does it handle? Why was it so important for the criminals to reach this depot?
Higher court is the center when it comes to the judicial fight against organized crime and corruption. And the major thing that we don't know now is which cases, which files have been contaminated by this tunnel and who has actually approached these files. We know that there is tons of drugs in this depot of the higher court, that there is a lot of the weapon, which is all used in the specific cases. So until today, we don't have the precise information of how many of these cases we are talking about, and we can also only think about a complaint process that some some of the lawyers will actually undergo now, knowing that they may have some maneuvering space because the depot has been contaminated and that proofs may not have the same validity in front of the court. So the case is grave, and it is clear that it has not been taken with adequate seriousness in Montenegro, where it should be actually taken with much more accountably by institutions. And it's been heavily politicized so far.
Right. Dalibor Uljarevic, thank you very much for joining us today. Much appreciated. And that's it for this week. Thanks for watching and see you next time.